I'm a 31-year-old woman, and this all starts with the kind of dad who treated me like a temporary house guest in his life the moment my mom died. My parents were married for about 16 years before she passed away suddenly when I was 15. A terminal illness. It was fast. Brutal. Barely enough time to process what was happening before it was over. Less than a year later, my dad, Peter, was remarried to a woman he barely knew, and I was expected to be okay with it. Peter is now 60, retired early, or so he tells people. He grew up with this old-fashioned mindset that only sons deserve to carry on family wealth. He never said it outright to my face back then, but the way he handled everything made it clear. When it came time for me to apply to colleges, I got nothing from him, not a dollar. I was on my own. Meanwhile, his new wife brought a son into the marriage, Brady. He was 10 at the time. I didn't resent the kid, I barely knew him, but the way Peter suddenly turned into super dad was jarring. Paid for Brady's private high school, trade school later on, bought him a used but solid car, even took him on a guys-only trip to Seattle. Meanwhile, I worked at a diner and a campus bookstore while pulling 18 credit hours a semester. I got through undergrad on a mix of scholarships and grinding every spare second. Law school was the same, more scholarships, more work. I kept my distance from Peter the whole time, just enough contact not to burn the bridge completely. I didn't want to need him, and luckily I didn't have to. After law school, I joined a small startup as their in-house legal, took stock options instead of a big salary, and when the company got acquired, I cashed out more than I ever thought possible at 27. With that money, I bought a duplex in a decent neighborhood outright. No mortgage, no strings. I remember showing it to Peter once, just trying to be civil. He looked around and said, "Not bad for a glorified apartment. Hope it doesn't lose value." That was the only thing he said. By that point, I'd learned to stop expecting basic respect. What I didn't know until later was that right after my mom died, Peter quietly transferred the title of her family's ancestral home to himself. That house had been in my maternal grandfather's name. I grew up there. It was meant to pass to me eventually. But when I was still underage and grieving, Peter used his status as the surviving spouse to move things around. It wasn't illegal technically, but it was dirty. I only found out through my maternal grandmother's old lawyer, who had kept tabs on everything after grandma passed. Peter kept that house, rented it out for income, and never mentioned any of it. Whenever we did talk, he acted like he'd built everything himself. No acknowledgement of where that property came from, whose name was originally on it, or how it was tied to my mom's side of the family, not his. We kept things civil but cold. He'd occasionally send holiday texts, sometimes ask vague questions about whether I was dating or thinking about settling down. Every time I answered like it was small talk with a neighbor. I never brought up the house. I waited. And then about 2 years ago, Peter came to me looking for help. He had gone into business with Brady, something to do with a restaurant. It flopped. They'd sunk most of Peter's savings into it. Now he was asking if I could lend him money to cover some debt. That word, lend, was a joke. There was no intention to repay it. Just a quiet expectation that I'd step up because I was doing well. I said no, not emotionally, not angrily, just no. He tried framing it as family obligation, like he'd done so much for me growing up. I reminded him I paid for every semester of school, every book, every meal. Then I walked away from the conversation and didn't return his calls. A few months later, I heard from a cousin that Peter was getting married again. This time to a woman named Lacey. She's 39, never been married before, no kids. I didn't know much about her, but Peter invited me to the wedding and said, "It would mean a lot to have you there." I agreed under one condition, that we meet in person to talk before the ceremony. He was confused, but agreed.